Hari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjavi Hari Jai 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 Go.
So this is little bit in part two. Shall we be dancing? Prabhupada would dance, and then after a few feet, you turn around and look up at the lady with the arms raised. Then we would dance for a few moments, meditating on the deity, and then we turn around and go on. And this we would dance the entire way. The devotees held hands in a circle around them to protect them from the crowd. It was a wonderful transcendental affair. Prabhupada was looking up at the deity and all the devotees were behind him. So this is installation of our devotees.
No, the Rafi actor.
Oh, okay. Shudurjani. Prabhupada surprised us. We didn't know if he was sick or not, feeling weak and dizzy. Sometimes he looked very old, sometimes he looked like an 18-year-old boy. He surprised us. He had his cane in his hand, but raised it in the air as he danced. Interesting, one of his work with the cane next to he's raising in there dancing. After a while, Shamsun came up to me and said, "Listen, he's not going to make it. Prabhupada is very ill. I want you to follow in the car, be within 30 seconds reach so we can put Prabhupada in the car immediately." Prabhupada was going down Park Lane, and from time to time, they couldn't pull the car fast enough to keep up with him. He would turn back, raise his hands, and say, "Haribo."
Haribo.
Several times he did this. He was going so fast that he had to wait. The devotees were dancing, the weather was beautiful, and the crowd was wonderful. Prabhupada. Passers-by were rooted to the spot looking at Prabhupada, a man of that age, simply dancing and jumping in the air like a young boy. It was a most amusing sight. And then every 5 minutes or so, Prabhupada would turn around and look towards him. The devotees would clear the way so no one blocked his sight. And he had a perfect view of Jagannath and Subhadra. But after a while, the police came in motion that we couldn't keep stopping with this. He had to keep the whole thing going, because the traffic jams were becoming critical. Devotees were crying, chanting, and dancing, and there was much commotion. Should they keep doing it? When Prabhupada was dancing, the bobbies, everyone knows what bobbies, this one, kept on coming up and looking for someone official. Finally, they came to me and said, "We'll have to tell you to sit down. He's causing too much of a disturbance. Everyone is becoming wild and can't control the crowd." You know? So I said, "All right," but I didn't say anything to Prabhupada. So then again, they came and said, "You must tell him, we'll have to sit down." So I said, "All right." And I attacked Prabhupada the whole time. He had been in ecstasy, dancing before the crowd and encouraging everyone else to dance. He would motion with his hands and encourage the devotees to keep dancing. He kept the momentum of the festival. I said, "Prabhupada, the policemen want you to sit down. They say you're creating havoc in the parade." Prabhupada looked at me, turned, and kept on. Completely ignored it and kept on dancing, and they couldn't do anything. Prabhupada wouldn't stop, and the police wouldn't say anything to him. So Prabhupada,
Jai.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Om Namo
Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Devotion about 10, Canto 6, Chapter 16, titled King Kidu's Lord, text number
20.
20. Atmanandanubhutyaiva
Atmanandanabhutayaiva.
Yasta
Yasya Shakti
Yurmaye
Gurmaye
Namaha
Namaha.
Yasta Shakti Yurmaye Namaha
Yastachakurmaye Namaha.
Rishikeshaya
Rishikeshaya
Mahate
Mahate.
Rishikeshaya Mahate
Rishikeshaya Mahade.
Namaste
Namaste
Anantamurtaye
Anantamurtaye.
Namaste
Namaste
Anantamurtaye
Nantamurtaye.
Atmanandanubhutyaiva
Atmanandanubhutyaiva.
Yasta Shakti Yurmaye Namaha
Nasta Shakti Namaha.
Rishikeshaya
Rishikeshaya Mahate.
Namaste Anantamurtaye
Namaste Vasta Atmanandanubhutyaiva. Nasta Shakti Namaha. Rishikeshaya Mahate. Namaste Nantamurtaye. Atmanandanubhutyaiva. Yasta Shakti Namaha. Rishikeshaya Mahate. Namaste Nantamurtaye.
Atmanandanubhutyaiva.
Atmanandanubhutyaiva.
Yastachakurmaye Namaha.
Yasta Shakti Namaha.
Rishikeshaya Mahate.
Rishikeshaya Mahate.
Namaste Nantamurtaye.
Namaste Nantamurtaye. Atmanandanubhutyaiva.
Atmanandanubhutyaiva.
Yasta Shakti Namaha.
Yastachakurmaye Namaha.
Rishikeshaya Mahate.
Rishikeshaya Mahate.
Namaste Nantamurtaye.
Namaste Nantamurtaye.
Atmanandanubhutyaiva. Yasta Shakti Namaha. Rishikeshaya Mahate. Namaste Nantamurtaye. Atmanandanubhutyaiva. Yasta Shakti Namaha. Rishikeshaya Mahate. Namaste Nantamurtaye. Atma Ananda. For personal bliss. Madhubhutya. By perception. Eva. Certainly. Nesta. Gurno. Shakti Urmaye. The waves of material nature. Namaha. Respectful obeisances. Rishikeshaya.
Unto the supreme controller of the senses.
Unto the supreme controller of the senses.
Mahate.
Mahate.
Unto the supreme.
Unto the supreme.
Namaha.
Namaha.
Respectful obeisances.
Respectful obeisances.
Te.
Te.
Unto you.
Unto you.
Ananta.
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 Murtaye.
Murtaye.
Whose expansion
Whose
is
expansions.
Perceiving your personal bliss, you are always transcendental to waves and to your nature. Therefore, my Lord, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. You are the supreme controller of the senses and your expansions of form are unlimited. You are the greatest, and therefore I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. Perceiving your personal bliss.
Receiving your personal bliss.
You are always transcendental to the waves and to your nature.
You are always transcendental to the ways of material nature.
Therefore, my Lord,
Therefore, my Lord,
I offer my respectful obeisances unto you.
I offer my respectful obeisances unto you.
You are the supreme controller of the senses.
You are the supreme controller of the senses,
And your expansions of form are unlimited.
and your expansions of form are unlimited.
You are the greatest.
You are the
You are the
greatest.
And
greatest.
therefore,
And therefore,
I offer my respectful obeisances.
I offer my respectful obeisances unto you.
This verse analytically differentiates living entity from the supreme Lord. The form of the Lord and the form of the conditioned soul are different because the Lord is always blissful, whereas the conditioned soul is always under the threefold essence of the material world. The supreme Lord is Satchit Ananda Vigrahana. He derives Ananda, bliss, from his own self. The Lord's body is transcendental, spiritual body. Because the conditioned soul has a material body, he has many bodily and mental troubles. The conditioned soul is always perturbed by attachment and detachment, whereas the Supreme Lord is always free from such dualities. The Lord is the supreme master of all the senses, whereas the conditioned soul is controlled by the senses. The Lord is the greatest, whereas the living entity is the smallest. The living entity is conditioned by the wage of material nature. But the Supreme Lord is transcendental to all actions and reactions. The expansion of the Supreme Lord's body are innumerable, Advaitam, Achyutam, Anadim, Anantam. But the conditioned soul is limited to only one form. From history, we learn that the conditioned soul and its power can sometimes expand into great forms, but the Lord's bodily expansions are unlimited. This means that the bodies of the Supreme Personality Godhead are prohibited in the way, unlike the bodies of the living entities. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Continue your personal bliss, you are always transcendental to the ways of human nature, from another of mind. Respectful obeisances unto you, you are the supreme controller of the senses and your expansions of form are unlimited. You are the greatest and therefore I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. This verse I read in Srimad comes from the Sanskrit. Yan Prana Purushona Yogancha Videsh Pilodan Ayurama Togo Nirmani Purushottam Prani. So the Lord's form is Advaitam. There's no one superior to him. He's the one supreme Lord. The Chitam, he's inconceivable. And Adam, he has no origin. Antarabhu, he's unlimited forms. Presumably we can have unlimited forms when we take repeated birth in the material world. Then we have many forms, but we don't select them by will. In a sense we do, but we're not even aware of it. Like someone wants to live like a hog, so they're selecting a hog's body to make a human's body, but when they live like a hog, which is indiscriminate eating, indiscriminate sex life, then they can become a hog and a dog. And so they're choosing their body, but they're not actually the master of their destiny because they don't have full control. They can't just decide anything to appear or disappear. We're masters of our own destiny in the sense that a prisoner
the impersonal Brahman, that when the impersonal oneness decides it wants to incarnate, then it just incarnates as many forms. Yatamat Tatupat. Whatever path you follow, it doesn't matter, all lead to the same goal. This is some Indian, not necessarily Indian, it's a type of mentality. Well, people think, well, you follow any path, it's okay, you follow your path, I follow my path. So we all go into Buchanan Street bus station and we decide, okay, we all want to go to Aberdeen today. Just go on, you go on whatever bus you like, I'll go on whatever bus I like, and we'll all get to Aberdeen. So Pip jumps on the Dumfries bus, Jayananda gets on the Hamilton bus, and Pancha gets on the Paisley bus, Venkateshwari, she gets on the Kilmarnock bus, and I got on the Aberdeen bus. No, I could go on another bus, Lesmago bus. But somehow or another, none of us are going to get there unless we go on the Aberdeen bus. So we can't just make a statement and because it's Sanskrit then it becomes true. It just becomes bogus. I knew one devotee used to make up his own bogus mantras. You just get like a few words from different verses and put them all together. And it didn't mean anything, it was just for the sound of it, just some nonsense. But just to say Yatamat Tatapat, it doesn't give it any authority. Yatamat means whatever way, Tatupat, that path is the same. I used to have another rhyming slang for this one, but it's not a Bhagavatam saying. Yatamat Tatapat, what a load of utter something. So you can't just like say something in Sanskrit and that makes it bona fide. It doesn't make it Vedic. Even Prabhupada said that. Someone was quoting Sanskrit and he says, you quote some Sanskrit and I quote some Sanskrit, what's the use? But the thing is where you're quoting it from, who are you quoting it from, what's the logic of it, what's the authority of it? So when Krishna descends in his form, then he is descending in his original form. And that form of Krishna, that's his original form. It's not some manifestation of Mahavishnu. As Prabhupada would say, due to poor fund of knowledge, then many people in India think that Krishna is an incarnation of Mahavishnu, but they don't understand how it's all working. If they read the Brahma Samhita, then they'll understand Ishvara Parama Krishna, Satchidananda Vigraha, Adir, Govinda, Sarva Karana Karanam. Krishna, Ishvara Parama Krishna. So of all the Ishwaras, all the controllers, the Parama, the supreme controller, meaning not supreme controller until somebody else comes in the room, but meaning the supreme controller, Bas, finito, is Krishna, Ishvara, Parama Krishna. Satchid Ananda Vigraha, his Vigraha is eternal, full of bliss and full of knowledge. He's not subject to the three modes of material nature. Anadir Govinda. So he, Anadir, he has no origin. Adir Govinda. Govinda is the origin of all. And Sarva Karana Karanam. Of all causes, he is the cause. So he's the cause of all causes. So just like we could say, well, we came from our parents, they came from their parents, blah, 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 all the way back. But ultimately, Krishna is the initiating cause of everything. When he glances over material nature, then the material universe becomes impregnated with the living entities who were in a state of suspended animation in the Mahatattva. This is explained in the second canto, that when the universe is annihilated, then all the ingredients merge back in, just like if you're in India, sometimes you see people drinking out of clay pots, and then when they're finished with it, they just put it on a pile of other clay, and then after some time, it goes back into the earth. Then they dig it back up, and they put some water in it, and they make it into pots again. So this is the real sustainable system. People used to eat on leaf plates, they'd throw it away, the cows would come and eat it. Nowadays, when people throw things away in plastic plates, the cows are getting damaged in their stomach, etc. So yeah, this system of recycling was already there for thousands of years. Eke Chat Mahanojanaha. So if we continue to go on in this way for hundreds of years, we can continue to live in this sustainable way for hundreds of years. So by accepting Krishna as supreme, we accept everything belongs to him. We stop fighting over it. Just like you get maybe you get two guys who rob a bank and they go back to share the loot, and then they're fighting over it. No, this is mine. No, it's mine. And they fight over it, and sometimes one kills the other, and then they take it all. But then the bank comes in and says, actually, it's not yours or yours, it's mine. So this is Krishna. Krishna is the bank. We're fighting over what is ours. We're staking a claim on it, and we become so frantically attached to transcendental, it's not subject to the modes of material nature, and it is full of bliss. Whereas our form in this material world is not sat, it's asat. It's not ananda, it's nirananda. Nirananda doesn't mean it's nearly blissful, it means like nirvana or nirguna without material qualities. So nirananda means without bliss. You know, how much bliss can you get from the little tip of your pinky? Maybe you can pick your ear, your nose, or scratch something with it. It brings a little relief. But if you jam it in a door, then how much pain can you get from it? So this body can give a lot of pain, this material world. It's not geared up for giving us bliss. As Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, the only bliss is possible when the jiva connects with the holy name, because in the material world, only two things have got any substance. That's the jiva and the holy name. And anything related to the holy name, of course, like the deities, prasadam, the transcendental literatures, etc. But apart from that, there's no substance in this world. And achit means without knowledge. Our knowledge is covered by illusion, and we're so much in illusion we have no idea of that we're covered by it. We think we're in knowledge, and we walk around proudly thinking we know something. But if we actually were in knowledge, we wouldn't be in this material world. We wouldn't be in this material body. The fact that we have a material body, there was Hari Krish Prabhu gave a class once, and he was on some boat journey, and somebody got hurt or got killed or something. And because it was quite a young person, then people were crying, saying, "Oh, what a shame, innocent person, so innocent, died like that." And he said, in the material world, no one is innocent. You're in the material world, that means you're guilty. You look around and you see, there's another guilty one, there's another guilty one, here's another guilty one. We're all guilty, that's why we're here. We're not here because we're innocent. We don't have a material body. We're not suffering the threefold miseries. Miseries coming from our own body and mind, from other people, from natural phenomena. These are the secondary causes, but the primary cause is karma. We have made some action in the past, and we're getting some reaction now. And the so-called threefold miseries, Adi Bhautika Klesha, Adi Daivika Klesha, Adi Atmika Klesha, they're simply the agents to dispense the karma which we're due. Still, the good news is that we don't have to remain in this condition. We don't have to remain guilty. As soon as you say guilty, it's just like in court. If someone commits some crime and then they protest their innocence and then they get found guilty, then they get punished more because they were trying to cheat the system. They weren't honest. But if someone goes in front of the court and says, "Yeah, I'm guilty. I didn't realize what I was doing. It was really stupid of me. I've learned my lesson," then the judge is likely to be a bit more lenient. And then the judge is thinking perhaps they don't need a custodial sentence, perhaps they've learned their lesson. So that really is taken into consideration. So as soon as we think, "Yeah, I'm guilty," I'm in this material world because of me, not because of anyone else. I'm suffering because of me, not because of someone else. It's not because someone did something to us that we're suffering, because that suffering would come from somewhere. It was due us. To quote Robbie Burns, if it was for you, it will no go past you. So that's the nature of karma. And someone else may deal it out to us, and then they may be guilty of how they dealt it out because they chose to be that agent. So it's not like we can say, okay, well, I'm going to give you some karma to relieve you. So I've got this hammer here. Just put your hand on the desk, and I'll smack your hand with the hammer, and then it'll purify you, and you go back home to God's head sooner. Okay, that's one hand on the next one, and then we'll start on the feet. And then by the time I'm finished with you, you'll be so purified. So the person who does that, then they're going to get the reaction, okay, that's how you believe, then that's what you'll get as well. So, and Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that we shouldn't try to trace, why am I getting this reaction? Try to understand the intricacies of action and reaction, because it's unfathomable. Just like in the Mahabharata, sometimes people were getting some reaction which was coming from 100 births previous. So we don't know what is the order of things. We just need to know the basic principle. And even if we are to trace it, what can you do? The only thing you can do is chant Hare Krishna. That's the surest and quickest way to relieve ourselves of the burden of karmic build-up. And whatever we're going through, we simply just have to try to continue with determination and take shelter in the Lord through the holy name, association of devotees, Shastra, etc. And not become distracted. Bhoga Shvaya Prasaktanam Thai Paritachetasam. So those who are distracted by Bhoga and Aishwarya, then they are the resolute Vyavasayatmaka Buddhir Ikeha Krunandana, the resolute determination to perform single-pointed Ikeha, single-pointed devotional service. It doesn't take place if we're distracted by opulence and sense enjoyment. And opulence doesn't necessarily mean to say that we want great wealth or great prestige. Sometimes it can just be like we want to wander about the universe just aimlessly. That can be some kind of space out, which can take us on births. This is what we've been doing, coming into the material world. It's been a space out for millions of births, just wandering around the forest of material enjoyment. Oh, let me try be a hog for a bit. Oh yes, this stool is very nice. Let me try to be an insect. Let me try to be a bird. Let me try this. Let me try that. Let me try to be a demigod. They seem to be, many people are performing pious acts. Even they come to the temple, they give donation, prayers, etc. And simply they're looking to get a better birth. Vidya kuliki kuribitar. They want a birth where their vidya, their education and knowledge, kula, their learning, is good, so that they can have nice enjoying facility. And then if they really make a lot of austerities, then they might want to take birth in the higher planetary systems, Swargalok. But as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, that from the topmost planet to the bottom, all are places wherein repeated birth and death take place. And Krishna's offering us something much more valuable. It's so valuable we cannot conceive of it, but we know it's there. We know it's something worth aiming for. So, of course, we don't have to be unnecessarily austere. It's not that we become so terrified of Maya that we can't function. As Prabhupada said, the devotees, one problem is they weren't sufficiently afraid of Maya. So fear in that sense is a good thing. To be afraid of Maya, to be afraid of disappointing the spiritual master, Shishikodantai Mapashashikija. This is not a bad thing. So we can utilize that in Krishna's service, to be afraid of losing the taste for chanting, to be afraid of losing the association of devotees. That kind of fear is a good impetus. If we're struggling, then at least, think, what's the alternative? Back out there again? That didn't work. It's not going to work again. So because Krishna is always transcendental to the modes of material nature, and his guna, rupa, and name are transcendental, everything about the Lord is transcendental. There's nothing about the Lord which is mundane. So any connection to the Lord through bhakti yoga, then that is connecting us with the source of all life, the source of all beings, and who is by nature eternal, full of bliss and knowledge. So then we again once take up our eternal constitutional position, just like a lump of coal falls out the fire. It cools down, it looks different than the coal which is in the fire, but then you put it back in and it starts to heat up again, and it starts to glow again. So by that connection, we take on the same nature. So therefore, we should never give up this chanting. When things become difficult, don't give up the chanting, do more chanting. When things are difficult, do more reading, do more service. This devotional service is not a mundane activity. It might look like that, but it's not. It's all about our intention and our purpose. Whatever we're doing, whether we're cooking directly for the deities, sometimes people think, oh, it's really fortunate. You can be Brahmin, you can be on the altar, you can be doing offerings, dressing the deities, etc. And that's true. It's a great privilege, and we have to prove ourselves to come to that point. But all the other services are equally for the deity's pleasure. Sweeping the path, putting salt on the snow. All these services are there to serve the Lord and the Lord's devotees, the purpose of the Lord, looking after the Lord's property. Of course, everything's the Lord's property, but here we have an unhindered opportunity to practice devotional service. You see some of these great acharyas, they write books which we can't comprehend, we can't begin to comprehend. And what do they want to do? They want to just sweep the area of the rasa dance. They want to just sweep around Vrindavan, things like that. Because this is the fruit of their knowledge, is humility. So just as Krishna is eternal, full of bliss and knowledge, the more we connect with Krishna, then the more we connect with that nature, which is also ours, because we are part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, then we have that same nature. We don't have the same potency, but we have the same nature, as much as a gold ring has the same qualities as the gold in the gold mine. So the fact that the devotee is saying therefore, this word therefore, so prior to this he's saying, perceiving your transcendental bliss, you're always transcendental to the waves of material nature. So this word therefore is very important because, as Prabhu says in the purport, is the verse is analytically differentiating between the living entity and the Supreme Lord. Because the Supreme Lord is always above the modes of material nature, whereas we're not always above them. For those who don't fall into the material world, yeah, that's true. But the Tatastha Shakti, the Jiva, has the ability to be under the Paraprakriti or the Aparaprakriti. That is our choice, and Krishna doesn't force the issue. So when he says, therefore, my Lord, I offer my respectful obeisance unto you, so he's saying, he's admitting, he's accepting and observing that the Supreme Lord is actually superior to us. We're not equal. We're not one. It's not like a certain group of Patanjalists, not the original Patanjali, but another Patanjalist, this is mentioned in Chaitanya Charitamrita. They're actually considered worse than the Mayavadis. Srila Prabhupada explains this, that the Mayavadis, they simply misunderstand the Supreme Absolute Truth to be some impersonal oneness, which they think they're a part and parcel of, and we are in quality. But the Patanjalists, they perform great austerities to get the darshan of the Supersoul. And when they get the darshan of the Supersoul, immediately they commit a great offense by thinking, there I am. And then immediately they fall down. Prabhupada explains it like this in Chaitanya Charitamrita. But here the devotee he's easily recognizing that the Supreme Lord is superior to me, therefore I offer my respectful obeisances. And Prabhupada gives one nice lecture. He's encouraging the devotees, don't be proud when dealing with Krishna. We're dealing with Krishna, you know. So, and Prabhupada's voice is choked with emotion when he's saying this. He says, remember, we're dealing with Krishna, don't be proud. Don't make demands of Krishna. Don't dictate to Krishna. And the same with Krishna's devotees. We have to learn this mode of association. We're so accustomed to associating in the material world, and where we sometimes take each other for granted. And even sometimes in the material world, a way of friendship is insulting each other. Maybe on a high spiritual level that can be there, but that's first there has to be honor, reverence, has to be respect, and then the other things can come. The basis of the other rasas is dasya. So just like in the Nectar of Devotion, you'll see Kutila and Jatila, they're always complaining about Krishna and criticizing Krishna. And Krishna explains that he relishes this much more than the hymns of the Vedas when his devotees are chastising them. Sometimes you read these pastimes, you think, how dare they, don't they know who Krishna is? And the fact of the matter is, this is a very high level of association. The Lord relishes it when they're scolding him, calling him a rascal, but it's done with so much affection we cannot understand. So we shouldn't try to superimpose superficial material relationships onto our devotee relationships. In this way, everybody can respect each other. So the Lord is called Atma Rama. He derives great Rama or satisfaction from himself. But we cannot do that. We're dependent on something external. We can become Atma Rama when we're connected with Krishna. We become self-satisfied because we're connected with the Supreme Self. But sometimes you see people who isolate themselves and they don't want to associate with anybody. They become like a hermit. And even in devotional circles, sometimes you see people who keep themselves separate, or we may even be like that sometimes. But we should understand that that's something we have to work on not being, because it's not like in Goloka Vrindavan, you get people who are doing their own program. It's like, okay, we're having a rasa dance today and everyone should be wearing yellow. No, I want to wear blue today. Okay, there's the material world, bye. Of course, it's not like some kind of cult in the spiritual world. It's not like the Krishna cult and you're all brainwashed into just doing things thoughtlessly. Because the inspiration is that it's a raganuga bhakti, it's spontaneous. And because we're following the authority spontaneously, then immediately we think, yeah, this is going to be great. Whatever they say, it's going to be amazing. It was amazing yesterday. It'll be amazing again today. And it's like that forever. It's not like, yesterday was a drag. Let's hope today's a bit better. Otherwise, I think I might bloop to the material world again. Krishna says, Janma karma chmedivyam evam yovati tattva chakvidya panarjanma naitimamiti sorjana naiti. You never come back to this material world again, once bitten, twice shy, because having tasted this material world, we never want to come back here again. It's just like when you have some bad experience that you never want, and then the opportunity is down and say, no thanks, been there, seen it, done it, don't want to do that again. I know where that's leading to. So this is how we have to become more and more wise to the ways of the material world. What we think is us is simply Maya giving us some false conception of ourselves, and we're falling for it. So many things we're falling for every day. But the process of Krishna consciousness is so nice that it awakens us to realize, actually, this is not me, this is Maya. It's just like a couple of months ago, I was under extreme stress and my mind was quite weighed down, and I felt a lot of pressure in my heart, etc. And I lay down and I had this realization, actually, none of this has anything to do with me. I'm nothing to do with this material world, but I'm identifying with this. If I identify with it as a lesson or as some service, then that's okay. If I identify with it as something to do with me, then it becomes insurmountable. So, of course, that doesn't mean to say that we don't take responsibility for our actions, for the things that we say and do. But we can actually realize that actually I've been in illusion thinking that this is all something to do with me, but it's actually nothing to do with me. This material, I have nothing to do with this material world. So sometimes Krishna gives us a glimpse like that. And then even amidst our great distress, we can actually begin to smile and feel like it's all worth it. If this is what it takes to get out of the material world, then let's be done with it. Because whatever we have to go through between now and going back to home to Godhead, we have to go through it. If we put it off now, we have to come back another lifetime. So say, for example, today we think, okay, that's it. I've had enough. I'm going out to enjoy. Then we'll have made advancement up to this point, but then we're going to enjoy, we incur karmic reactions, and then maybe we take birth again, and we have to go into the womb, we have to be a child, learning to walk, talk, toilet training, teething, going to school, the best days of your life. I don't think so. I remember when I was at school, people saying it's best days of your life. I was thinking, no, I'm determined to remember it's not the best days of my life. I'm not going to forget this. I'm not going to be selective at looking back. And of course, you look back and think, well, in some ways it was a lot more, there was a lot more carefree. It appears like that. But every living entity is in anxiety. So then, and then we have to go to school, then we have to go to college or uni or get a job or whatever. And then finally we meet a devotee, we get a book and think, oh, this is cool. And then we get back onto the same path and we have to clear all that karma we've accumulated since we left, coming back to that point. And then we come to the same hurdle. Oh, am I going to do it this time? Or am I going to go back out and come back the whole circle of samsara again and come back to the same point? So whatever hoops we have to jump through to get back to Godhead, we're going to have to do it sometime. So better we just do it now. We'll be back sooner. Just like the four Kumaras. They cursed Jai and Vijay to take birth in the material world, and they gave him a choice. Was it 5 or 7 times as a devotee and 3 times as a enemy? Was it 5 or 7? 7. So they had a little confab and they said, 7 times as devotees, that sounds very nice, but if we do it only 3 times as a demon, we can come back quickly. So they said, okay, thank you, Lord. we'll take birth 3 times as your enemies. Because they just thought, let's go through this and then get back quickly. So the same with us. Of course, we're not saying everyone become an enemy of the Lord and go back quickly. That's not our choice here. But whatever we have to go through, it's like Mother Ratnaranjini, when she was with us, she was a very amazing devotee. She was a living example of what Rupa Goswami mentions in the Nectar of Devotion, that a pure devotee never likes to remain idle. It's only when she stopped doing her service were we able to see how much service she was actually doing. And so this is us. So of course, it doesn't mean to say just physically busy. It means keeping our mind engaged. Whenever we've got time, we read, we chant. You know, how many times do we say, I have no time to do this or do that, but we've got time for prajalpa. We've got time to surf the net, so many times to do other things. But we've no time for chanting some extra or for reading or doing some seva or something. And her mood was when she got diagnosed with a brain tumor, she didn't want to take painkillers. She was just saying, well, whatever I'm going to have to suffer, let me go through it so I can be finished in this life and just go back. If I take some painkillers and it reduces the pain and then I don't get the pain I'm due, then maybe I'll have to come back. So I don't want to have to come back. So she went through a fair amount of transformation. Even physically, she looked quite different. And her, we could see a transformation of her character. But it was, for those who were there to witness that, there was no doubt that this was a transcendental personality shining through. So, of course, that type of commitment, sometimes that makes us a little afraid. We think, oh, I don't want to commit to that. You know, what if it's too much? But if we're praying to Krishna, he gives us strength to carry through. There's a saying that if you had the choice to not have went through some difficulty and not learn the lesson, would you take that choice? They did some survey and practically everybody, if not everybody, said, I'd rather have went through it and got the lesson that I learned. So they say that a lesson hard to learn is hard to forget. So sometimes it appears that we keep falling into the same trap time and time again. And we become despondent. But actually, it's a blessing in disguise because we're falling into the same trap time and time again. That means there's a chance we can begin to recognize it. It's not like every time there's a different trap and you're totally bewildered and it's like you've got no chance. You can begin to see the enemy. What's the enemy? Lust, anger, and greed. Really, that's what it comes down to, isn't it? It's nothing new in the material world. Everybody's afflicted in the same way. And this process of Krishna consciousness is awakening us to realize, actually, I didn't even know that I was afflicted by this. I just thought it was great fun. But now we're actually waking up to the fact that this is standing in the way of my happiness. It's not giving me happiness. I keep thinking of this or engaging in this, thinking it's going to make me happy, but it doesn't. It's getting in the way of it. It's an anartha. What was once artha, wanted, we begin to realize is anartha. And that's a big step forward for the living entity. So let's not forget that lesson. And in due course of time, like Krishna says, that even if one is unable to follow the principles of devotional service, if someone is not averse to them, then ultimately they will come to the same destination. So Krishna will help us. And because Krishna is, contrary to public opinion, Muhammad Ali is not the greatest. There was this famous boxer called Muhammad Ali. Everybody know him. And this was his tagline used to be, I am the greatest. Was it? Muhammad Ali, float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. He would say, I'm the greatest, but he's not the greatest. Krishna's the greatest. And that's true because he says it here. The devotee says, you're the greatest. So of all great personalities, Krishna is the greatest. Because no one has his potencies. He is Yogeshwar, he's master of all mystic powers. And the devotees here, Prabhupada says, that the conditioned soul also by mystic power can expand into another 8 forms, but the Lord's bodily expansions are unlimited. Plus, the yogi, when they expand into 9 forms in total, then they're all doing the same thing simultaneously. Whereas Krishna and his unlimited forms are doing different things. And then finally, Prabhupada makes this point that the forms of the Lord are without beginning, without end, unlike the forms of the living entity, the conditioned living entity. So our body is different from ourself, whereas Krishna's body are non-different. And for us to know that almost seems kind of easy. When people have such a big trouble with it, sometimes we're bewildered how to preach to them because we think, oh, it's a big deal, can you find anyone better? It's like someone brought it up to Prabhupada that, why do you accept Krishna as God? He says, you have another God, you have a better God. If you can show me a better God, then I'll be happy to hear about it. And you read Krishna's pastimes and you think, well, these are just beyond imagination. You cannot just imagine these things. It's not just like the fertile wanderings of somebody on hallucinogens or something like that. They just wrote some fantastical stories because we experience great bliss from discussing these things. If it was just some story like Harry Potter or something, then your Harry Potter reading group would probably fall apart after a little while. But people have been reading these transcendental literatures all their lives, maybe even for lifetimes, and they never become tired of them because Krishna is inexhaustible. So we can read the same pastimes every day and get more and more bliss because the process is Cheto Darpana Marjanam. It's cleansing the heart, cleansing the mirror of the mind. So we'll just stop there. Anyone want any questions or comments? Pancha.
Thanks, Prabhu. I just got first one comment on the Muhammad Ali thing. I'm not sure you heard this past time because he had some contact with Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, and so he's coming off the airport one time, and there's a group of devotees in the airport distributing books or something, and there's big press to see Muhammad Ali, and I think I forget the exact details, but basically all the press are praising him and things, and he says, "No, not me," and he takes one of a Bhagavad Gita, and he opens up to a picture of Prabhupada, and he says, "This is the greatest." So even Muhammad Ali knows.
That's nice. Yeah, of course, what he was doing was just showbiz, but he was actually known to be quite a humble guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was quite a humble person. And that's the greatest thing we can do. If we recognize those who are greater than us, that's better than just trying to be the greatest. Trying to be the supreme controller, then it's taking out so much burden. And it's not a burden we can carry. I remember I kind of sarcastically said to one devotee once who was on quite a controlling trip and said, "Oh, it must be so difficult for you." He said, "What?" I said, "Just being the supreme personality of Godhead." Of course, it wasn't. It didn't go down too well, I must say. So it's not something we should do to each other. It was a bit rough, but we were both quite young, and we'd fire comments at each other's chipping away at each other's ego. But it's the fact of the matter, when we think we're the supreme controller, we're trying to be the enjoyer, and we just create so much unnecessary anxiety for ourselves. Make life difficult unnecessarily. Okay, we'll just stop there. Iskon Guru Govinda Ki, Srila Prabhupada Ki, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki.
His Grace Prabhupada Prana Prabhu Ki.
Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki.